Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, "To be or not to be." He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Malcolm was always involved somewhere in the struggle.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. Today's guests, Victoria Pennell, Graham Weatherspoon, and Owen Rogers. Different subjects that we're going to cover. Of course, we're dealing with our children and the youth of today, and as we all know, there's a lot of problems with human trafficking. You heard the president yesterday, and we have a representative of Fairgirls here, Victoria Pennell. We want to cover the subject from a child's perspective, of course, but Victoria, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
You're just growing leaps and bounds every time you return. Yes. Now, you've taken on something very serious here. As the president said yesterday, we'll show a clip about it as we go on. But give us an idea, what sort of responsibility is this that you're taking on here?
Well, I am a spokesperson for fairgirls.org, which is an organization started by Andrea Powell. She is the founder of fairgirls.org. And sex trafficking, it is something that we have to take a stand about. We can't sit back and watch it and pretend it's not sitting right there in front of us. We can't not pay attention to it. It is right there, and we have to do something about it. And, you know, I feel that it is something that everybody can try to stop. You don't have to be, you know, a big figure in the community. Everybody can do something to try to stop it. Yeah. You know, it's time that we have to start talking to our clergy about it, you know, speaking out in the communities, you know, just telling people just, you know, to partner with us and just help us try to stop child sex trafficking. And it is something that is so important in this epidemic. It is something that we can't afford to ignore. So many young girls as young as 11 years old are being sexually exploited. 20 million young girls and women are being sold into the sex trafficking trade per year. That is crazy. Yeah. It is crazy. And I feel that I don't want my friends or anybody that I know, I don't want that to happen to them. Right. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're a stranger, my friend, my family. I don't want no child.
These are girls your age.
Yes, these are girls of my age. Right. I don't want anybody to go through this.
So how does it feel when you meet somebody that's gone through this? I'm sure you pick up the vibrations, you know? You
can see the pain in their eyes. Right. You know, it's a lot of hurt, a lot of emptiness. And, you know, and mentally, what it does to them physically, you can't even imagine. But what it does to them mentally, that's something that we really need to work with. So
you'll come in as a therapist, more or less.
Yes. And I know this necklace that I'm wearing right now was made by a survivor of child sex trafficking, and she made this for me. And a lot of times they go about different ways of solving that pain that they have inside of them. Yeah. But sometimes those ways, making jewelry is a good thing, but sometimes they might take out, you know, those ways in in different bad situations, like getting tattoos and piercing themselves and pain, and just, you know, and these girls that are going through this have learned to love pain because that's all they've ever been exposed to. And so, I mean, some of the stories that I've heard, you know, meeting the survivors of child sex trafficking, it is just so sad that this happened in the first place, to make America rise up and say, matter of fact, the whole world to rise up and say, we're not going to take this anymore.
Yeah.
It's sad that it had to get to this point.
This is nothing new. This is nothing new. This has been going on for quite some time. We all know about this. But it's been on the down low, and people haven't talked about it. But let's go. I just want you to just give us 5 minutes, and I want you to listen to our president present to you a couple of cases that he talks about. And the young ladies are in the audience. So let's go to that clip, and we'll come right back after this intermission. Well, let's listen to our president.
The Oxford Union in England.
Action as well. By educating their congregations, by joining in coalitions that are bound by a love of God and a concern for the oppressed. And like that Good Samaritan on the road to Jericho, we can't just pass by indifferent. We've got to be moved by compassion. We've got to bind up the wounds. Let's come together around a simple truth, that we are our brother's keepers and we are our sister's keepers. And finally, every citizen can take action by learning more, by going to the website that we helped create, slaveryfootprint.org, by speaking up and insisting that the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the products we buy are made free of forced labor, by standing up against the degradation and abuse of women. That's how real change happens, from the bottom up. And if you doubt that, ask Marie Godet Nehoniota from the Congo. Think about Marie's story. She was kidnapped by rebels, turned into a slave. She was abused physically and sexually. They got her pregnant 5 times. In one awful battle, her children were killed, all 5 of them. Miraculously, she survived and escaped. And with care and support, she began to heal. And she learned to read and write and sew, and today Marie is back home working toward a new future. Or ask Ima Matul. She grew up in Indonesia, and at 17 was given the opportunity to work as a nanny here in the United States. But when she arrived, it turned out to be a nightmare. Cooking, cleaning, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. One beating was so bad it sent her to the emergency room. And finally she escaped. And with the help from a group that cared, today Ima has a stable job. She is an advocate. She's even testified before Congress. Or ask Sheila White, who grew up in the Bronx. Fleeing an abusive home, she fell in with a guy who said he'd protect her. Instead, he sold her, just 15 years old, 15, to men who raped her and beat her and burned her with irons. And finally, after years, with the help of a nonprofit led by other survivors, she found the courage to break free and get the services she needed. Sheila earned her GED. Today she is a powerful, fierce advocate who helped to pass a new anti-trafficking law right here in New York. These women endured unspeakable horror, but in their unbreakable will, in their courage, in their resilience, they remind us that this cycle can be broken. Victims can become not only survivors, they can become leaders and advocates and bring about change. And I just met Ima and Sheila and several of their fellow advocates, and I have to tell you, they are an incredible inspiration. They are here. They've chosen to tell their stories. I want them to stand and be recognized because they are inspiring all of us. Please. Sheila, Ima.
I hope that touched you like it touched me. I mean, that's just amazing to have our president speak on things like this. I mean, that just gets you right in the heart, right?
It does.
Right?
It does.
I told you, it's touching. You see, that we've got that much power in the White House.
And the fact that it wasn't about politics. It wasn't about that
Exactly.
he has 42 more days to,
Right?
to the election.
Right?
It was about the
about
fact
us.
that he's standing with us, trying to stop something that has risen to the point of, of pain and the suffering of young girls. That's what it was
He's
about.
got 2 girls in his house.
2 girls.
So he really hit home. That's, well,
this topic, many of the children that are missing in this country are invariably abducted and taken into the slave trade. Not only does it go on here, it's in all parts of the world.
yeah.
So you go to Indonesia, you go to Bangkok, Thailand, infamously known, pedophiles travel to Thailand specifically to have sexual encounters with children.
Right.
And a number of pedophiles
boys.
have been tracked there and back over a period of time and have been arrested. But, for so many children to be missing, and we see it on Channel 7 Eyewitness, they'll have you seen so-and-so? These children can't just be runaways. They have to have been abducted. There was a guy on film recently. They filmed this guy snatching a girl who was walking with her little brother on the street. And she fought with the guy, and she was able to get away. And her little brother was just screaming. I think it was in the Bronx. So when we started seeing children on milk cartons years ago,
Yeah.
these children didn't run away. They didn't get lost. Somebody snatched them up, and they're not dead. And you spoke about the psychological damage. See, that is how you keep, it's like the elephant. You chain the baby elephant, the calf, you chain him to a stake in the ground, and the elephant rocks and assumes he can't get free. And as the elephant grows, he still believes that he can't pull the stake out of the ground. It's the same thing with the child. When they take these children, whether they turn them into warriors as they've done in Africa, in the Congo and other places,
Yeah.
you develop the mental, the psychological arena wherein this child will exist in what they perceive to be their norm. And even though they're not chained down, they will not leave the abuser.
Well, we find that even with Sandusky,
Sandusky.
Sandusky.
Over in, college.
Can you imagine all those years he was raping these young boys, and people covered it up? I mean, how is that possible? Now, all this stuff has been going on for years, and suddenly people are starting to stand up and do something about it.
There are 2 things that I see as being a recurring part of the problem. Here in New York, certainly the foundation with which Ms. Pennell is working, reaching out across the country, the 2 things that I see, one, for some people, it's what they might actually call easy money. Those who are exploiting, those who are participating in the rape and the sale of young people, for them it's easy money. That's one thing, the money. The second thing is we have young people for whom there are very few protectors. And some of these young people have come through the system. They've come through the system running away from home at age 13. They've come through the system being adopted or being a foster child in 3, 4, 5, 6 homes before they reach age 18. And they don't know, or they haven't been shown that there's a legal way, for them to support themselves, and a legal way to avoid this exploitation. So what happens, of course, and the people who exploit them, they trick, they deceive these young people into thinking, well, you do this for me, you sleep with X number of people, and I'll give you the money, I'll provide you a place to live. They con these young children, and they deceive them. We who are not always aware of that game, we see the results of it. The 18, 19-year-old people who are abusive, who are using drugs, who are strung out, who have been kind of destroyed on the inside. We have to deal with that in two ways. We have to, first of all, understand, and this is part of what we have been talking about on this show for quite a while, that these two are our children.
Right.
This is our child. The 14-year-old girl that might be hanging out in parts of Manhattan or parts of Brooklyn where she knows she can get customers and where men will buy her for the night. This is our child. The child who has been smuggled across the border, whether it be from parts of Africa or Latin America, this too is our child. So we have to deal with that, with our responsibility to the children and for the children, not only those we gave birth to, but because they're part of our community. The second thing is that we have to provide alternative ways for these young people to come of age in ways that are self-sufficient. Most 14-year-olds don't know what they can do that will provide them money for the rent so they can pay the bills. Because adults haven't shown them. This is not something like back in the days where you're living on the farm. So we have to do two things. We have to deal with providing them alternatives, or maybe even places where they can live safely without exploitation. And at the other side of it, we have to make sure that they are not exploited for money, because sometimes there's big money involved by the people who will say, I'll protect you, but in return you have to do this, this, and this.
Well, as the point, we were talking about the football game and the men not wanting to own up to that they had been raped by this man. I mean, that's something to really be ashamed of, especially from a male's point of view. From a female's point of view, it leads to a life of needing love or misunderstanding what love is really about.
And, you know, females are very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And sensitive. And we also, like I do, I have a need of wanting love.
Right.
And that's the one thing. And I feel like not only females, but everyone wants love.
The human condition.
And when you know, a female is exposed to someone that so-called is going to give them that love,
right,
they decide to follow that love, and that usually that love leads them to sexual exploitation.
Right.
And like I said, and like Mr. Graham said, you know, with the elephant, but once in the psychological aspect, once a child is exposed over and over and over and over again to that pain, to the hurt of not being loved, that's all they expect. And when happiness is knocking at their door, trying to
they don't understand.
they don't understand it,
right,
and it's just something that's there, and they can't accept it as something that they are supposed to accept. And so all they're known to and all they realize is that pain. Right. And when pain comes, they accept it with open arms,
right,
because that's all they were exposed to. And we have to change that mentality that you're nothing, that you're worthless, that's all you deserve.
Well, I'm sure it'd be helpful for all these women out there that have gone through these changes and to come to an organization like yours, Fair Girls?
Fairgirls.org. We're online, fairgirls.org. And I mean,
you're looking for volunteers to come in and help?
Yes, we are looking for volunteers. I would like to see people. I'll be speaking at a Stop the Modern Slavery Walk. It's this Saturday, the 29th, at the National Mall, starting at 12 noon. It's a nonprofit organization trying to stop modern slavery. It's in Washington. I would love to see everybody there. Because we have to take a stand. Nobody's going to do it for us. I'm sorry?
Is the president going to show up?
It would be nice. It would be very nice. But, I mean, we can't expect anybody to do anything for us. We have to take a stand. We have to say, like you said, these are our children, and we have to do something about it.
So this is
I'm sorry, anybody that thinks that they could just come in and volunteer, they need to understand they will be vetted.
You have to be screened.
You are not just going to walk in
That's right.
to volunteer.
Right.
Fingerprints are very useful.
Because that's where a lot of people would come, wouldn't it?
That's where abusers would go.
Isn't that what Sandusky did?
To take advantage
The coach, exactly.
Yeah.
of an individual. And there's a psychology that these people use. I had a case years ago, real quick. They brought a young lady to my office. They thought she had run away. And I determined who she was and where she was from. She was from the Midwest. But she had left a group home and gone to Florida to be with her mother. Her mother was a street walker in Miami.
Okay.
And the mother tried to put her on the stroll. She said, no, that's not happening. She left her mother, she got on a bus and came to New York. She met a guy on the subway. One thing led to another. The police picked her up and brought her to a command in Brooklyn, and then they sent her to me. Long story short, she had spent some time with a police officer the day before at an apartment in Brooklyn. And I said, what did you do all day? She said, oh, we watch cartoons. I said, cartoons go off at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
She said, well, I said, no, you're lying to me. What happened? What happened? There was a double cylinder lock, so she couldn't get out of the apartment. The police officer raped her in the apartment, right? 15-year-old girl. And she was concerned about what was going to happen to the police officer. I said to her, hold it. That's not for you to worry about. My concern is what's happening to you.
Right.
You see, don't worry about the police officer. You cannot survive in New York at age 15 by yourself. You will wind up dead, on drugs, or on the stroll.
Right.
I said, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. Right? Needless to say, we arrested the police officer. We took him for rape. Another detective said to me, oh, she's a tramp. Don't worry about her. You know, just forget, you know, 'cause you're going to lock up a cop for her?
Yeah.
So I turned to him and I said, when your daughter gets raped, we'll let that guy go too.
Oh, you're
It
right.
changed his entire demeanor. I said, this is a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah,
This
right.
is somebody's daughter. Even
That's
if her
right.
mother is not doing what she should be doing,
Right.
this is a child. Whether it's a child or an adult, she should not be going through this.
One of the things that
Well, what
happens
about
is
the reasoning about the girl being seductive and she's probably, you know, asked for it?
Is there such a thing as a 12-year-old being seductive? I mean, if you
Well,
talk
you
to
know
a
what I
sane,
mean.
sober,
Well,
moral adult man,
I'm just bringing up the point
But
that
let's keep
that's
in
the
mind,
excuse, right?
sex
She
is
wanted it
psychological.
anyway?
That's always the implication in court. I've talked to rape victims. I have many, many friends who were raped as young girls growing
But the
up.
mother's a hooker. I mean, what the hell do you
Regardless.
expect?
we have an
Regardless.
obligation to protect our children.
Amen.
And again, part of what
Okay.
I would suggest to the people who are watching is not only to protect my daughter, but I have an obligation to protect your daughter and yours and yours and yours. And that's part of what would have to be addressed as a community. We need to, at the Block Association, we need to, at the church, we need to, at the PTA, we need to, at the business meeting, talk about the fact that there's a 13-year-old or 14-year-old on the block that nobody knows where she lives and who is going to look out for her.
Right.
Our roles as adults to protect that child, to help that child get to adulthood in a safe, sane way, is something we have to take very seriously. And as time has evolved, it used to be that some 13-year-olds, well, you know, they'd hitchhike and thumb their way to New York, and by the scruff of their own neck, they would make it into adulthood. In 2012, for a 12, 13-year-old to come to New York and survive and pay their own way and to find ways, legal ways to support themselves, it's almost impossible. So we have to understand that the 12, the 13, the 14-year-old who is lured to places like New York because of the crowds, because of the arts, and because, I mean, the dream, the promise of being a movie or a Broadway star is a big lure for some young people. Because of the fact there's a lot of people here and they think they can disappear in the crowds, we have a disproportionate number of young people who run away from small town, Wilmington or whatever, and come to New York. We encounter these children. We encounter them. It might be in the subway, it might be at the store, but we have to accept responsibility for helping these children get to adulthood in a safe, sane way. They may not be our children individually, but they're our children as a community. And I think within our community, we have to be particularly sensitive to that. We cannot say that the 13-year-old who's hanging out on the corner for the last 3 days without a place to sleep is not our responsibility. And this is, we have to say this is part, as family, as community, as church, we have to say this is part of our responsibility. And that's part of ultimately what a program like this challenges people. If there are children, if there are young people on the corner who don't have a place to sleep, if there are young women that you know of and there's no family, no adult taking care of that person, we have to assume some protective role for that child. And it's not just girls, because boys are being exploited in some equally heinous ways.
It's all about self-esteem, as we well know. I mean, as you have to project that. I mean, I'm sure that's part of the biggest part of your job is to bring them back to their self-esteem.
Right. But before they get to the street, the adults in the family, in the church, in the school, in the block, have to work to help that child develop that self-esteem. Because by the time the 13-year-old sleeping on the corner, it might be a bit late. We have a task to do before they get to that corner.
Well, we're talking about the ones that are already out there and that need this help, that haven't found the love energy.
I feel that it is a matter of trust.
Okay.
A lot of the girls and the boys being exploited put their trust in everyone, thinking that they're going to get the love that they desire, that they need.
Naive.
They're very naive.
Okay.
And put the trust in somebody. Like my mom always says, Victoria, if you ever go to a party, never lay your drink down and then pick it back up.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's right.
Because somebody could put something in that.
That's right.
Roofies.
And you think she's paranoid. Huh?
And sometimes I think she's paranoid, but I understand where she's going with it because she's trying to protect me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That same girl that didn't have her mom to do that,
That's right.
is going to put her drink down, pick it up, and that same person that put the drug in that drink is going to be watching to see what she's going to do.
Right.
That girl is going to drink it, get woozy, and that's what leads to sexual exploitation.
Right.
It's a matter of trust.
Right.
The girls always feel that they can trust everyone that comes by and say, "Hi, little girl, you're so pretty. Let me take you home with me. You're so pretty." It's a matter of trust.
Right.
And we have to find people that are not going to betray those girls' trust. And every time that good trust is offered to them, they don't know how to accept it.
Yeah.
Because they've been so betrayed by so many different people.
Been burnt so many times.
And they just feel like, what if this is the same thing?
You know, I've done counseling with young ladies years ago, and I tell them, you must love yourself.
Amen.
That's the first person you must love. Whether your mother or father don't love you, and this one and that one, you must love yourself. You're here for a specific reason. Most people don't know why they're here. They think that no one loves them and they're here by accident. No, you're not here by accident. You're here to fulfill a purpose.
That's right.
You must love yourself.
Amen.
Girls, don't rely on a guy. There's no guy that you know that loves you enough to truly love you. If he's not working, if he can't provide for himself, handle his bills, he can't take care of you. So the only thing he loves is to physically get between your legs, and that's the bottom line. Then when you get pregnant, he's gone. He doesn't love you, all right? You have to love yourself. Some girls say they want to have a baby. A baby is a human being between the age of 1 year and birth, and nobody remains at that stage. They continue to grow. So if you want a baby, go buy a doll. Because if you're not old enough to take care of yourself along with your partner, you don't need to be producing another child.
Right.
So our young people need to understand that love is not physical. Sex is not love. They must see the value in themselves. And you don't allow somebody to define you. A lot of young men use pejorative terms to describe a young lady. All right? And vice versa. You know, you see, what's the guy on American Idol? Yo, dog. A dog is an animal. All right? What's his name? Randy?
Yeah.
You ever call me a dog, you're going to have a problem. All right? A dog is an animal on 4 legs with fur and a tail. I am not a dog, and a woman is not a bitch. A bitch is a female dog. And young ladies need to step it up a notch and refuse to accept that from any young man that addresses her in that way. Women need to raise their standards of what they expect from a young man. All right? And what a young man should understand in approaching a young lady as with you is that, no, you're not having sex with me. You want to go to movies? Fine. We go out? Fine. No. At this stage of life, that's not happening. That's not love. So, and all of this has to be taught. And it has to be exemplified in the home. And unfortunately, a lot of children don't have the home. And because of that, they gravitate towards people in the street, looking for that camaraderie.
When you say it used to be taught in the home, this is part of the tension that we deal with in our community. It used to be that there were parents and preachers who would help baby girl get to adulthood in a safe, sane manner, appreciating who she is and what she can be. Nowadays, sometimes the parents are not there, and some preachers are, quite frankly, off on different agendas that do not include the protection of our young people. The challenge becomes for us dealing with the young girls, those who don't know what they're worth, and those who may have strayed. We look to places, and certainly you have places like Odyssey House and Fair Girls. You have places that have worked to help girls gain the self-esteem and understand what they're worth. We also have to challenge those who are decision makers, and this is where it becomes political. And some people would love to have a conversation until it becomes political. But we have to understand that there are billions of our dollars that are going through ACS, billions of our dollars that are going through different agencies, and we don't have the right settings to use this money to give the value to our girls so that they can develop the self-esteem so they can become productive adults. So we have to then challenge some of the politicians who make decisions about how our tax dollars are spent. We have to step up, because it is not something sitting back and just clucking our tongues about, you know, the girl that ran away down the block and talking about how bad it is that we saw somebody who looked like her sleeping in the park is not enough. And this program, and I have to commend you, because this program, the discussion that we have here is meant to take things into the homes that people can take it further.
That's right.
Ask your pastor, what are we doing for the 14-year-old girl who ran away from home?
Right.
Ask somebody on your block association, what are we doing if we see a teenage girl who doesn't apparently have a place to sleep?
That's right.
And even bring it to your precinct community council. You know, wait a minute, officer, what's the story? Do we lock this child up for not having a home, or do we have alternatives being presented to these children who are on our streets? And I'm talking about, you know, not just Midtown Manhattan. I'm talking about Marcus Garvey Park. I'm talking about places in Brooklyn, places in the Bronx where you have young people who don't apparently have a home. And we have to challenge some of the decision makers who are spending our tax dollars that, wait a minute, let's go further than talking about giving these girls, giving these boys a safe place. Let's make sure that some of our resources go towards providing safe homes for these young people. Because in this time, the economy, it's easy to say, let's cut back on these services. And there are some of our political leaders who are saying, well, we don't need to be spending money on that. We need to save our children. And we need to make sure that we have the resources there available so they have safe housing. We have record numbers of children who are in the shelters right now. And the other thing, which is not often enough talked about, is the number of young people, 16, 17, 18, who are aging out of the shelters, and what happens to them when somebody says, yo, baby, you can make $300 a night working for me on the corner. Who says to them, wait, you know, what's the alternative that they have if they don't know how to support themselves, they don't have money, they don't have an address, and they haven't had a permanent address in the last 4 or 5 years? We have to challenge politicians and leaders on that. Well,
we all know about the demonic forces that exist in our political system, such as ACS. And we'll start to relate to how ACS is affecting our kids.
Billions of our dollars.
You know, we'll talk about Graham's daycare center or Head Start, where we catch the kids, you know, at 4 years old, where they're really being molded into human beings. But let's talk about, let's roll the roll in there. Reverend Daughtry was at NAN this Saturday, and he has a problem with his daycare center. It's about to close, and I believe he was down at ACS yesterday and got arrested. You were there, right? Now?
We are losing the control of institutions.
Run the clip, and then we'll come back and talk about ACS. All right? We'll be right back at you.
The Oxford Union in England.
I know how to stay married. And I know when to eat your soup. Listen, let me first of all thank you so much. I don't have the words to express my gratitude for your prayers and good wishes and cards. and especially to Reverend Al Sharpton, who has been with us throughout our illness. As you know, I was in the hospital for 2 months. And thank you for your visit. Those of us who've had these long, serious hospital stay, you know what a visit means. Yes. And so we thank you. Thank you very much. And so we're here on what I call one of the most comprehensive and far-reaching impact on our community that I've seen in all of my 54 years of ministry. And it is the takeover by outside forces of daycare. Yeah, it's quietly, it's subtle, and insidious. A lot of people don't know it, except those of us who are in that daycare area. The ACS, which has responsibility for children's service, and in particular our concern, daycare, issued the RFP, request for proposal, last year. All of the daycare centers had to submit, which they did. We learned in April, the return was made this year. We learned in April from inside that our scores, the Alonzo Dortchard daycare, had been lowered. We began to protest this, and then finally, after we protested that we had inside information and we had made formal protests, finally, ACS then came out with the reason. Now, I want you to listen very carefully. These are their reasoning. They said, yes, this is how the change occurred. There was an amendment. They said there were 3 educational consultants. One said we scored 100. Another said we scored 87. Now, you got to have 75 to pass, right? A third scored 61. So now they said, okay, we've got a quality review team, and go back and investigate. And then they said, the person who scored 100, you come, well, they didn't say that directly, but you know, they said, you come down 31 points to 69. I'm quoting them now, I ain't making this up. You come down to 69. They said to the person who scored 87, you come down to 19. So what you have then is the 100 person is coming down 31 points to 69. Then they have the person who scored the 87 coming down 19, which brings that to, what is that, 68. And the person who scored the 61, she upped her, or he, or whoever it was, upped it 2 points to 63. Then they divided now the 69, 68, 63, and they come up with a score for us, a grand total of 66%, which means that we fall far below the even passing level. How they get to that, you be the judge. The quality review team basically is a team that assures they get who they want. And what they wanted was community daycare centers. Practically all of them are gone. And what they wanted was outside conglomerate, alien to our culture and our history, taking over. Yesterday, a day before, the staff, people who've been working for us for 10, 15 years. We've been at it 44 years. We started with George McMurray many, many years ago. The people who were with us, they were told, you're fired. Stand quickly. Those of you who are here, stand. These people, we brought a few of them who told, you're fired. No more, you finished. So obviously what we're going to do is protest. We've been protesting daily in front of the ACS at 150 William Street. We will continue to protest. In fact, we'll start our civil disobedience campaign on Monday. I'm going to be the first to go to jail on Monday. We are saying to all of you who are concerned about our children, because whoever take over these daycare centers is going to control the mind of your children for years to come. To meet us at 150 William Street, we have a rally, major rally, 5 p.m. tomorrow at the House of the Lord Church. I hope to see all of my friends. If you don't want to go to jail with me, just come and watch me. I need your help. Yeah, I need your help.
This is important because they have told us to vacate our building on September 28th. vacate, take all our stuff, and leave. And we are not going quietly away. We are not.
You can see how serious this is. We all know about cases of ACS coming in and stealing children. Now they're stealing daycare programs. And you're in the middle of all this, right, Graham?
Yeah, I am the board chairman.
You have the same problem coming up this week.
Right, I'm the board chairman of the McDonough Street Head Start in Bed-Stuy. We've been around for 45 or 46 years. Have a staff of 33. We have 140 children that we've been servicing. Our children come out of Head Start knowing how to read and write. They don't go to kindergarten playing little games. They know how to read. And they are cutting. People need to understand, this would never have happened if our people had gotten up and voted in the last election. And I'm gonna put the blame where it lies. We have enough problems as it is, but I'm dealing with us first. I don't have any children in New York. I don't have any grandchildren in New York. They don't live here. There's an election coming up in a few days. When you fail to put yourself on the line as your predecessors did, whatever you get as a result of failing to do what you should do, God gives us stuff. And when you don't take care of the things that he gives you, you lose it.
That's right. That's right.
It's called stewardship.
Sure. That's right.
If you have a plant, you don't water the plant dies.
That's right.
We had an election a year and a half ago, and people were talking about Bloomberg has money. No one cares about how much money he got. The question was, how many votes did he get?
He almost lost.
And when almost chicken don't make no soup, almost doesn't count, okay? It doesn't count. Second place doesn't mean anything in this world. Our people failed to vote, and I'm putting it right in our laps. So many people, only 15% of the electorate showed up to vote against a mayor that they said they didn't want. Only 15%. Where was the 85% of you that were complaining and are complaining today, but you sat home and did nothing?
You know what?
And wait, let me just finish. Of the 15% that showed up for the mayoral election, Bloomberg got 8% of that vote. So he won the election with 8% of the total electorate of New York City. Whose fault is that?
Right?
Whose fault is that? And then you come back to this point.
I was one of the people that didn't vote.
Where you come back to the point where you want to demonstrate. Wow. Demonstrating is too late. It's too late. Because Bloomberg and his nefarious cronies, Richter, head of ACS, and these people that wrote this program, which was rejected 3 or 4 years ago, they brought it back, and he has put this program in place. They gave an agency from Glen Cove, New York,
tell it.
the slots for 3,000 children in Brooklyn.
Whoa. Whose children?
Our children.
Our children.
Now, our children are going to be at a loss. Let me back up. 11,000 children effective next Monday will have no daycare at all.
That's sad.
Under this early learn program.
Meanwhile, millions of dollars are going to Glen Cove.
Millions of dollars on that contract, and let me continue. They don't have facilities to put the children in. They have some buildings that they've identified, but the buildings have not been renovated. There's no certificate of occupancy for an educational institution. The Department of Health has not cleared the properties. So parents are going to be expecting their children to be going to a facility which doesn't exist. That's number one. Of the budget, ACS turned around and asked for money from the New York Foundation because they don't have the money in the budget to run this early learn program. And of the centers that are remaining, the budgets that they gave them, they said, you've got the award, but you have to cut the number of children you're servicing. One center in the Bronx was servicing 300 children a day.
Wow.
Their allocation was cut to 175. Another thing.
All our children.
Bloomberg, the Republican, not the Democrat, not the Independent. Bloomberg, the lifetime Republican.
Right.
You now, in running your center under Early Learn, you have to pay health care for your employees.
Mm-hmm.
You got to provide the insurance. The city is not providing the insurance anymore.
Mm.
Of the new companies coming in, they're not even going to pay these people the salaries that they were getting paid because they're not going to be part of the union.
Say again?
The new agencies coming in
Right.
are not held to the contract, to the standing contract that the city has had with daycare.
So it's union busting?
Union busting across the board.
And bringing out Hannity's crowd from Long
Right.
Island. Republicans.
Profiteering.
And what they're doing, as with Reverend Daughtry's people, they've been told they're fired, but they can apply for a job with the new people, but the new people are not going to hire them.
Or pay
Right?
them.
I sat in a meeting where an attorney for one group in Brooklyn said, well, we have people we want to get rid of anyway. It's a black woman too.
Wow.
Right? We want to get rid of anyway. And if we get the award, we're going to just get rid of people. So the children are going to be at a loss because these centers are not going to be able to truly meet their payroll and pay all of their bills. They're only giving them $3 and change per child per day to run a program. That includes paying rent for the building out of that $3 and change. I have a Head Start program. Head Start is a federally funded program.
How are they justifying all this?
These decisions are made behind closed doors.
Let me
Most of
tell
us
you
are not
something.
aware of it until afterwards.
When you fail to engage in the political process, you're not in the process.
Right.
The only thing you can do is demonstrate and protest, and that's after the fact. It's done. It's a wash.
Yeah.
I have a Head Start program. That's federal money.
Right.
ACS has been diverting monies to all different channels, commingling funds, doing all sorts of stuff.
And you've called them on it, right?
We called the feds on them.
Right.
I got no problem stating my position here. The doors are supposed to close Friday. Right? We were at a meeting at ACS last week, and truth be told, we are looking at various avenues in order to maintain our facility and keep our center intact. These are federal dollars.
Okay.
The federal government right now is questioning ACS. Our building is 27,000 square feet.
27,000?
27. It is a state-of-the-art building.
Wow.
Wow.
We have gotten rave reviews from the federal examiners. When they come to this facility, they can't believe it exists, and at that, it exists for
So how did you
these
go on
dark children.
How did you do on the point system that Daughtry
we
is
got
talking about?
a total of 72 points. 72.
And you have 27,000 square feet.
We have a building that we own
that you own
in conjunction with the federal government.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the city.
All right.
So the city can't use this building.
Okay. Well, thank God.
All right? They can't use it. We own title and deed to the property.
Well, that's...
All right?
Yeah.
But the city is, what they did, the RFP went in for Head Start because the city's evaluation by the feds last year was so egregious. It was 57 pages long. It was so egregious, the federal government said to New York City, whoa, we can't give you $190 million for Head Start. What we're going to do, we're going to break that up, and we're going to dole it out directly to the Head Start centers because the way you've been handling the money,
Okay.
quickly, RFP was done. We submitted it. We will get the results from the federal government in late November. But what ACS is doing, they're shutting down some Head Start centers in October.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Because if you're not around in November, if you're not operating,
Jesus.
how are you going to accept
All
the
about
federal
money.
grant?
All about
because
money.
your employees invariably will be looking for work elsewhere.
Yeah.
But the city
Right.
had to sign a declaration that they would not do anything to impede another competitor from receiving federal funds. You sign that statement, then you turn around and you grab the federal monies that is supposed to come to the centers and redivert them to a failing program called Early Learn,
Which are bringing outsiders from Long
bringing
Island.
outsiders in with no experience when you have agencies like Reverend Daughtry's and ours that have been around for over 45 years.
Know what they're doing.
With a track record, with federal evaluations, highly rated.
You're right. So
how do you explain this? You see, so unfortunately, because our people failed to vote because they're talking. They're too lazy to get up and handle their business. I don't care what Bloomberg wanted to do, run for a third term, immaterial. If you didn't want him in, you would have got up and voted. But because our people failed to vote, this is some of the fallout that comes from that.
Yeah.
There's another election coming up next year.
Yeah.
All right? We'll see if people show up for that election, or they sit home and complain.
I think they learned their lesson by now, hopefully.
But the children are the ones that are going to suffer.
That's right.
That's right.
And what honor does a parent do when you haven't done what you should do to protect your child? All you had to do was go and vote.
And it causes big problems in the community. You're having no place to put your child. So you can
That's
go to
another
work.
thing.
Single
People
parents
have to
cannot go to work.
Right. They closed 2 centers in Chinatown.
I mean, crazy.
The city councilwoman from Chinatown said, what are we supposed to do now? We're supposed to roll the clock back 60 years and take the children to the factory? One of the city councilmen, a Jewish guy in Brooklyn, said, there are 5 centers in my district, 3 African-American, 2 white. It's interesting. The African-American centers have been shut down under Early Learn, and the white centers are allowed to exist. He says, that I find to be troubling. You were going to say something. Go ahead. I don't want to run my mouth.
No, I was just going to say that anything that advances our children, anything that advances them to the point where they're at, a bigger stage or bigger level, they decide to take it down.
Right.
This is not just a New York problem. This is part of what, again, I have to commend you for what you do. Because when we talk about the exploitation of children in Africa, when we talk about what happened to some of our children in Haiti, when we talk about what's happening in other parts of the country, we have to understand that there are decisions being made that are decimating the futures of many of our children. And these decision makers have to be confronted by us individually as well as collectively. If our block association has nothing on the agenda that deals with the welfare of our children, something's remiss. If our church has nothing on their agenda in terms of providing services when these child care centers are being closed, using the vacant space, because most churches, quite frankly, are vacant 6 days a week, using those vacant spaces to provide care for our children, then there's something wrong. And we have to continually challenge some of the people who say they're serving us, because we're talking about problems in our community, we're talking about problems, and again, there are people saying, like Victoria, when she talked about working with the Girls Foundation from Washington, D.C. to New York, from New York to Africa, we're talking about our children who are not being served, but billions of dollars that are supposed to be used for our children are being misspent or being diverted to other interests. Quite frankly, and this may trouble some people, other people outside of our community really don't give a damn about our children. The question is, do we care enough about our children that we speak up and act up at our block association, at our church, at our community association? Do we care enough? And our silence is what condemns us, because I have been to parent meetings where 2 or 3 parents show up. 30 children in the class and 2 or 3 parents show up. And our silence condemns it. This is where, again, I challenge the people who are watching. You may not have a child in school, but you may have a grandchild or somebody in your building. And perhaps you should attend that meeting and surrogate for the parent who is working and cannot attend the meeting. Because if we don't show up at the meetings, decisions are being made in our absence that are condemning our children to a horrific future.
And like Mr. Graham said, it is so important that we vote. It is so important. At the last election, this lady in my building, and she was saying that one of the reasons that she kept her vote the same person was because she didn't like change. It wasn't because the person that was running was good or they had awesome policies. She didn't like change.
Some things we have to change.
That is that sick mentality.
You're right.
That is stopping our people from excelling. And it is so important that we vote. It is very important.
I just want to say this one thing about voting. I mean, when you talk about that, about the people that weren't smart enough to vote, you're looking at one right here. Because I thought Bloomberg's money was going to wash it out, and I had no faith in anything. I really thought I stayed home that day. And then when it came out that Thompson almost won, I said, damn. I mean, I'm kicking myself in my butt. And you're right. I mean, somebody as civic-minded as me didn't vote. I mean, you know what I mean? Really. I mean, now I imagine how many others out there didn't vote.
Well, most people didn't vote.
You know what I mean?
Well, most people didn't vote because if only 15% of the electorate voted, that includes all races of people, that 15%.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of black people didn't vote.
Yeah.
All right? So they're putting on a front. They're BSing themselves.
Yeah.
All right? Because the figures don't lie.
Right.
There was an article about the preachers telling their congregations not to vote in the presidential election.
I saw that.
That's asininity. It's stupid. It's ignorant.
Stupidity.
It's aiding and abetting your adversary. My pastor, A.R. Bernard, was on MSNBC to refute that nonsense because they said that he was one of the ones that said it. He said, I never said such a thing, and I would never tell people to do that.
You can't hand the future of our children over to other people, let them decide what's going to happen.
They threw his name in there knowing that he had voted for Barack Obama the last time, and he said he's absolutely voting for Barack Obama this time. He said, my congregation wouldn't be stupid enough to listen to something as asinine as my telling them don't vote, and I would never tell him because we run him out of the place if he says something like that.
Well, we have a minute left. I mean, this is time has flown by, and I really have enjoyed this one. I mean, this is really, it's touched our spirits, and we've added something to people's knowledge about what we're doing out here. And that means that there's a presidential campaign coming up in progress. And remember, you better vote.
You have to register now. Register now so you can vote in November.
Make sure you get in there and vote. Don't take for granted that Obama's going to win.
Not at all.
Because these thieves out here are lying to us, and they're going to steal this
Photo
election
ID
if they can.
and all the other stuff they're trying
if
to
they
prevent
can.
people from voting.
So be careful. Can you imagine what life would be without Obama?
Most of the children in public school look like us. Most of the children in foster care look like us. And we as adults have to take responsibility. We cannot hand the decision-making over to other people, some of whom are not elected, and most of whom don't look like us. That's the reality of it. And certainly the Our Girls, working with Our Girls Foundation, as Victoria and other people have done, we need to make sure that we are part of decision-making.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for coming. The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned. We'll have more information coming to you. All right? That was a good one.
If you give the address or contact information before we...
The Oxford Union in England.
Who taught you to hate the color of your skin? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?